Welcome to the Stroke of Midnight. Yeah, we haven't done that in a while.
Yeah.
This week's episode is going to be a sad one, but also a happy one. It is going to be a celebration of a man who unfortunately passed away a couple days ago, Mr. Bob Weir. We've been doing this podcast for what, almost a year now?
Coming up on a year, it seems like.
Almost a year, and for whatever reason, we've never really discussed the Grateful Dead. So, as fate would have it, here is the Grateful Dead episode. Now, before we get started, Dorian, just in our friendship, we have never discussed the Grateful Dead.
No, I can't recall a time.
Are you a fan of the Grateful Dead?
I am. Yes. Yes. You know, with like a small asterisk next to it. It's not like they're not like a go-to, for me generally, but yeah, I like them. There's some stuff of theirs that I dislike.
Sure.
But any band with a catalog as large as theirs, that's bound to be, a
well,
reality.
Especially as like open as they were.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I'll be honest, there's a ton that I don't like about the Grateful Dead, but I also love the Grateful Dead.
Right. I like all the respect in the world for them. And no question. I mean, their place in music history is unprecedented, and nobody will ever do what they did. It's an amazing legacy that they've left behind.
Yeah.
And and it was a beautiful thing that Bob Weir carried it on so with such integrity after Jerry passed away, that it wasn't just this like shitty cash grab, kind of feeling.
Even though it did kind of feel that way for the last few years.
Did it? Okay, I lost. Yeah, I kind of.
When you so after it was a weird thing. We'll get this part out of the way, and then I'll start my little spiel. So when they did Fare Thee Well, which I'm going to talk at great length about later. But that was the 50th anniversary of the Grateful Dead, the big performances that they did with Trey Anastasio.
Yeah.
That felt like the natural closure of the whole Grateful Dead experiment. And then shortly after that, he started Dead and Company with John Mayer. And initially, it felt like a positive thing because it felt like he was re-inspired after Fare Thee Well.
Mm-hmm.
And, John comes from the pop world. And so the LA, I hate to say the LA influence, but that's, what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is.
The like big market media music industry sort of co-opted the Grateful Dead in partnership with John Mayer. And as the Dead and Company project went on over time, things started to kind of reveal themselves a little bit.
Oh, okay.
The way that like the merchandising sort of changed and the ticket prices escalated. And so, I don't think, from Bob's perspective anyway, that it was a cash grab. I think he just saw it as a means to an end to keep the dream alive for as long as he could. Now, that's not to say that it didn't, come with its negatives, because I think it certainly did. But at the end of the day, he got 10 more years of playing in front of huge audiences.
Yeah.
So,
I can only imagine for a guy who, as we were discussing before we started recording, Bob Weir was like, he was like 16 when he started playing with Jerry, and he's a child when he started touring with the Grateful Dead, and that's been his whole life. I can only imagine, like literally since his formative years, this is all he's known. Like I can only imagine that, like for him, any opportunity to keep it moving forward, like he probably had that really positive, like no, I just want to keep it going, but other people. Yeah. As we've seen so many times through history, can leverage that to their nefarious ends.
From the little things that I've heard, behind the scenes, I think there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen. I think, like I said, I think bigger players got involved. And when that sort of stuff happens, the bottom line becomes a little bit more important than it used to be. Mm-hmm. So, I'm sure everyone has their opinion of what the last few years of, you know, the project was and was maybe meant to some people, but at the end of the day, that dude just wanted to be on stage and play music in front of people. So
Yeah.
he got to do that. So I don't fault him for that whatsoever. So I want to start by kind of telling my Grateful Dead story, because I think it's an interesting one, and I think it's probably not what people are going to expect from me. So
I'm excited to hear it.
yeah. So I did not grow up a fan of the Grateful Dead. In fact, I was put off by the Grateful Dead for a very long time. Starting, with my childhood. My dad was a huge Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin fan, and shit on the Grateful Dead any opportunity he had. And when you're a kid, your parents' opinion of music, I don't know how it was for you, but like my dad's opinion carried so much weight.
Yeah.
My mom's not so much, but she just, she wasn't into music.
Yeah. Well, it was when we were at that age where you were still under the mistaken impression that like adults know everything. And oftentimes, if like they have a strong opinion about something, like, oh, well, that must be correct then.
Here, when I look back on it now, right? Here's how I think about it. Because from a very early age, I didn't trust my dad about anything else in life except for music. So he was not a great person. He was kind of a disaster of a person, but he had great taste in music. But what I think, I don't know that this was like a conscious thing when I was young, but I could tell how much those bands meant to him, how much he loved them. And in that sense, it was like, okay, if he loves them that much, then I should love them that much. Now, Pink Floyd has never left my life. Pink Floyd, and David Gilmour specifically, are as important to me as they ever were for my dad. Maybe even more, because I've gotten to experience this later part of Gilmour's life and to see his shows and the music that he's released in his this late into his life, and the emotional gravity of it all. But that's a story for another time. He vehemently hated the Grateful Dead for whatever reason. We never talked about it. I don't know why, but it was kind of, the seed was planted that like the Dead wasn't for me. And then, as I started to discover my own music, i.e. Fish and Frank Zappa, and the other things of my teenage years, and I started to have friends that were listening to the Grateful Dead, I noticed a stark difference. And that, especially like early Fish, it's basically just, modern Zappa with a quirky, very goofy twist to it, I suppose. But, I was very much into the notier side of music, so progressive rock and fusion and all the crazy stuff. When I was a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, the crazier the better. Yeah. Right? The Grateful Dead was not that. And a lot of times, especially like when I started to go see, when I was starting to like work in the music industry, but also just going to like concerts and festivals, and like especially a lot of these like back in like the early 2000s, there were a lot of these small, jam band hippie, backwoods festivals in New York and Massachusetts. There'd be a lot of Grateful Dead cover bands, and how do I say this without being a complete jerk?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate cover bands in general, but the Grateful Dead cover bands, especially for the time, they weren't doing a great job. Even Dark Star, like Dark Star was recreating Grateful Dead shows.
Right. They would just play like San Francisco 79,
yeah,
June 79 or whatever.
But like to play the music is it's so silly because like the thing that makes the Grateful Dead special, made the Grateful Dead special, was the spirit behind the music. And if you didn't have the spirit, then you just were never going to get the point across. So for the longest time, I was like, fuck, I don't understand why everyone freaks out about the Grateful Dead. I just didn't get it. Did not get it. And then when I moved to Connecticut and I was working for Psychedelic Breakfast, all of the people who were closest to me, whether in the band or the people within the bubble of the band, loved the Grateful Dead. Like loved the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And for years, I cannot tell you how many times from when I was 21 till 28, or no, 26, I guess, 21 to 20, 5 years. From the time that I was 21 to 26, that I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning in some random person's house listening to Fire on the Mountain or some nonsense, right? And every time I would just be like, what the fuck, man? Like, can we put on something else, right?
Yeah.
For years this went on. And I'd have these long conversations, especially with the musician, like the band guys, right? And they'd be like, you got to give it a chance. And I was like, guys, I've listened to this music now. I've listened to more Grateful Dead than most people on this planet, and I hate it. Like, what am I? Please try to explain to me, what am I missing here? Because I'm hearing it, but I'm not. I was hearing it, but I wasn't listening to it, right? But it was also the circumstances that surrounded it. You had a bunch of crazy kids doing crazy things, and there was an energy disconnect.
Yeah, disparity.
I want to listen to rah, and they're that was the Grateful Dead to me. I was like, I'm not trying to go to bed right now. I'm trying to stay up till the sun comes up. God damn it. Yeah. So,
I need you to assault me with music right now.
Yeah. So, throughout those years, it was this counterproductive thing of, you should love the Grateful Dead, and the whole time it was like, you're making me hate the Grateful Dead more.
Right, yeah.
And it's such a funny thing when I look back on it, because it totally makes sense for who I am as a person, who I am as a creative. I don't close the door on anything. I am never a fine, or like, there's no like, this is the end for me, or this, right? I am very receptive to things and change and changed opinions and so on. And so when I moved to Colorado and started working with Pretty Lights, and life got way too fast, way too quick, a moment happened. I can't tell you the specific moment, but a moment happened when I heard Grateful Dead somewhere, and I got it. Like, it was like an instantaneous moment where I was like, holy shit. And what I later realized was that, like, because my life was kind of not spiraling out of control, but it was just like had accelerated so quickly, I needed something to slow me down and to kind of bring me back to earth a little bit, which sounds counterproductive or counterintuitive, because the Grateful Dead was such an experimental kind of take you out of the earth band, right? So here's the thing. It was the ballads, the Jerry ballads, is what got me into the Grateful Dead. To this day, I could take or leave them as a jam band. They have some incredible jams. They have some jams where I'm like, I don't get this. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, get me out of here.
but it was, the Stella Blues and the, Mission in the Rain and Wharf Rats and those types of songs. Those were the songs that I fell in love with initially. And they were a means to an end, I think, of right place, right time, or not right place, right time, because it had been waiting for me. The Grateful Dead had been waiting for me to come find them for 15 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I fell in love with music, and it was always sitting right there waiting for me. It was always in my peripherals, but I was never ready for it, right? But once I became ready, they welcomed me in, spiritually.
What a gift to have that treasure chest of music now available, accessible to you. That's like, wow, holy shit, there's so much to experience now.
Yeah. And and at that point, in the late 2000s, I was so engrossed in Fish that it was almost like this natural thing of okay, you need something else. You've taken all you can take from Fish, in a sense. Right? I'd listened to it all. I'd listened to every fucking show.
Yeah.
Multiple times, whether it was through archive.org or tape trading or this thing or that, I had listened to everything. I took in as much Fish as humanly possible for a good, 15-year period or whatever it was. And so as I developed this appreciation for the Dead, the one thing that I couldn't really wrap my head around was Bob Weir.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the beginning, especially, and I don't know if it was just which shows I was listening to or, and I couldn't, everything was so chaotic at that time that this all feels very much like a blur, but I remember the feelings that I had. So but in the beginning of me starting to explore the Grateful Dead, I was turned off by songs like One More Saturday Night and the Bob Dylan covers, and I was like,
fucking Dancing in the Streets.
Yeah, shit like that, where I was just what the and then when you listen to the shows where Jerry's unhealthy and Bobby had to kind of carry the mantle, and the whole time I'm just craving for these Jerry songs, and I was like, God, and so I started to kind of get this resentment towards Bob Weir in the beginning of my Grateful Dead journey, where I was like, motherfucker, stop singing, let Jerry sing,
Shut up, Bob.
Yeah, and so the sort of cycle sort of repeated itself, where I wasn't giving Bobby the opportunity to touch me the way that Jerry had. And this isn't how I operate generally. I am usually very open and very sensitive to how I experience music. And maybe this has just come with age, and maybe I'm just thinking about it in my present self. I don't know.
Sure.
When I sit here and I look over at this absurd, collection of music that I have, and I'm like, I appreciate so much nonsense. Why was I having such a hard time appreciating all of the Grateful Dead?
Mm-hmm. I'm sure at the time, though, it made perfect sense to you.
Yeah. And so, now we, so I spent a good 4 or 5 years immersing myself in the Grateful Dead, but simultaneously resenting Bob Weir. And just being I just want to hear Jerry sing more. It's so stupid now looking back on it, but that's how I felt. And throughout this time, right now, here's the other part of this: is throughout this time now, I could only listen to Jerry on recording, could never experience Jerry Garcia live.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe this has something to do with it also. I had experienced Bob Weir multiple times. I was at the Bonnaroo in 2004 when the Dead played with Joan Osborne, and there was a bunch of people on stage, and it was nonsense, and it was chaos. And I had gone to a further show, and so I had seen a bunch of the Grateful Dead offshoots that had occurred, post Jerry's death. Rat Dog, Rat Dog was a band that Bobby had, but
forgot about them.
But, so like I had been to Phil and Friends shows, and I had been to Further, and I had been to The Dead, and none of them really touched me, and none of them had a positive impact on me for like that whole decade. And so maybe that kind of fed into the whole like how Bob Weir's just, whatever. It's like early on I was like, the Grateful Dead is Jerry Garcia. This is the foolish young Greg talking, right?
Bob's just riding his coattails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just for the longest time I could not wrap my head around it. And then a magical thing happened. The 50th anniversary of the Grateful Dead was looming, and Pete Shapiro had this brilliant idea to connect the Dead and Trey Anastasio and have him fill in the Jerry role, and they did the Fare Thee Well series in the summer of 2015. Now, this is one of the rare opportunities in life where your current self, your past self, and your future self all kind of collide into this like really beautiful moment in time. And what I experienced at Fare Thee Well was something that I'll probably never experience again. And it's an unfortunate byproduct of like the times, because so many things are happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you think about like the legendary concerts of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right? People can pinpoint these moments in time, and they're still talked about to this day.
Right. Yeah, even if you weren't there.
Even if you weren't there, people are going to say they were there, or this or whatever, right? But like these concerts that are talked about, right? When you talk about like the Beatles at Giant Stadium, or you talk about Woodstock, or you talk about, what is it, Live Aid, or whatever number of just like legend, the
Hells Angels Rolling Stones show.
Yeah, Altamont, or like Metallica Guns N' Roses in 1992, or whatever. There's a bevy of concerts that are these like landmark moments in time that will far exceed the lifespan of any person who was involved in it. And Fare Thee Well should be one of them, but I don't know if it will be, because even now, fast forward 10 years later, I don't ever hear anyone talking about Fare Thee Well.
Yeah, it's true,
and that's unfortunate. So for me, I will talk about Fare Thee Well and how special it was, because it gave a generation of people the opportunity to actually experience the Grateful Dead as it was intended to be experienced, as close as it could, without obviously all the original members.
Right.
And
Trey clearly being the heir apparent to the Jerry role.
Here's the thing that happened, and this is why I was giving slack to Bob Weir with the whole Dead and Company thing. All that Trey did was bridge the gap for a lot of us. It gave us a reason to truly open our ears and to understand what was going on. Trey wasn't the star of the show. As great as he did, it shone a light on Bob Weir in a way that I had never experienced. Now, I had probably seen him 10 or 15 times previously, but I had never experienced the greatness of Bob Weir until that weekend. And it was because my guy was on stage with that guy. Now you've got my attention.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was the brilliance of that weekend, was that for the people who weren't old enough to get to experience the Dead, you get the next best thing. And yeah, Trey did a great job, but the point of the whole thing wasn't to say, Trey, you're the heir apparent. The point was, we need someone with enough credence to make this whole thing make sense to everyone, all these new people that are going to come to this show. And that's what worked. And so for the
He's almost
first,
like a translator in a sense. It kind of sounds like it was
yeah,
like, he you know how Trey functions because as a Fish fan. So hearing him on stage, you can kind of understand what the rest of the band is doing because of how Trey is playing
yeah.
differently.
But also it was just like, how else could you see the Grateful Dead in front of 90,000 people without Trey Anastasio? They
Mm-hmm.
tried for 20 years before that, and they were never
Right.
able to pull that sort of thing off, right? And so you could plug in any great guitar player, which they did numerous times. Steve Kimmock, amazing guitar player. Warren Haynes, amazing guitar player. But they don't have the gravity to make the experience as big as it could be. Trey did. That's where it worked, right?
Nice.
And so for the first time now, I am all ears. And my heart's open, and my mind's open, and my ears are open, and I am wide open, right? There were 3 moments over the course of the weekend. Well, there were more than 3. But, well, okay, I'm going to say, I could say fucking 12 moments,
Right, I
but
was gonna say, it
but
sounds like
I'm going to keep this to the Bob Weir portion for now, but I'm going to loop in another thing later when I kind of wrap this all up. There were 3 moments throughout the course of the weekend where I was completely demolished. Now, I don't know. I do know because now I've gone back and re-ingested all of these songs in their intended format with Jerry on stage, and they had just as much gravity then as they did that weekend. So that was just me being an idiot. But there were 3 songs that I heard Bob Weir sing where I was in tears, basically. Oh, no, not basically. Most definitely in tears. And I literally was like, holy shit. This man has a power that I'd never understood or felt before. And those 3 songs were Lost Sailor, Cassidy, and then he sang a Jerry song, Days Between. And the Days Between specifically, I implore anyone who hasn't heard this, because it's such a, I mean, obviously the lyrics of the song are very important. The context of the song, it being one of the last great Jerry songs before his passing. But the way that Bobby sang it, and I think time has a lot to do with this too, because when you fast forward 20 years from when that song was written, or 20 odd years from when that song was written, and then Bobby is singing this at this really, landmark special thing, you could hear his life experience and his emotions and everything in that song in a way that is very, very, very special and unique. And those kind of performances don't happen very often.
Yeah.
So the Days
Wow.
Between from Fare Thee Well is one of the most special things I've ever experienced in a concert setting. And that was the day when I fell in love with Bob Weir. So much so that my child's middle name is Cassidy because of that song.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
yeah. And that weekend was very special. And mine and Christina's first dance was Standing on the Moon from Fare Thee Well. The Trey sang that, not Bobby, but so these landmark moments in my life are the soundtrack to those moments have become Grateful Dead songs.
Wow.
So this is, the lesson
Quite
in
a
life.
transition, yeah.
Exactly. The lesson in life here is to never close the door. You should never close the door, because you never know when you become ready for something. You may not be ready for it today, or you might, and you might not. But when I think back on my life, and I think back to when I'm a 10-year-old or a 5-year-old, however old I was when my dad is motherfucking the hippies and the Grateful Dead, to then, being surrounded by hippies and the Grateful Dead and hating it, to then being like, well, I kind of like the Grateful Dead, but fuck Bob Weir, to then falling in love with Bob Weir and naming my fucking kid after one of his songs.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's
growth. Yeah.
It's growth for sure. It's a special thing, and it speaks to the real true power of their music.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just one guy's experience with it. I bet you we could interview 1 million people, maybe
Right.
not 1 million people, but we could probably interview 100,000 people that have similar and very different experiences of how powerfully impacted in their own way they were by the Grateful Dead. And so, thank you to all involved. A life well lived, and rest in peace, Bob Weir. Thank you for the amazing music and the amazing experiences that you provided so many people for such a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely devoted his life to.
Yeah.
Literally from probably earlier than he should have been doing it, was already devoting his life to it.
Yeah, but you know what,
amazing.
man? Like that's where the magic really, I mean, I started doing lighting design when I was 18. Like, I was on the road when I was 18, and not that far behind him.
Yeah.
And I think when because like when you're a kid and you just you commit to something so insane.
Yeah.
If you see it, like, if you can make it through those first few years, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And whether it's like this bigger thing calling out to you, or you just don't know where else to go, or whatever the circumstances may be. But like when you can do this that early in life, and then like learn the real way to do it, right? Like, you're gonna get your teeth kicked in so often,
right?
But you're not gonna be stopped. And also, like, I think there's a real beautiful thing about being a child in a room full of adults, so to speak, because you have so much to learn from the people that are around you. A lot of times, right? If you go off on some sort of endeavor with your peers, who's the person with the wisdom, right? Even if it's a couple of years, a couple of years when you're that age makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right? And like, that was always kind of my experience. I always hung out with the older folks. I never hung out with people my own age. Even, Phil's a year older than me, but even like when I was an early teenager, I was hanging out with like 17, 18-year-olds when I was like 13, and like getting into a lot of fucking trouble. But I was also learning shit from them. And like, you grow up a little faster, but like, it prepares you for life in different ways than the traditional pathways. And I think that's probably one of the great benefits that he had, was that, like, he knew where he was supposed to be, and he wasn't going to let his inexperience or his whatever thing you put it. You're like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm going to do. Let's go fucking do it. And that was it.
Yeah. And that youthful ignorance will oftentimes allow you to surmount the impossible just purely because you don't know it's impossible. Nobody taught me I couldn't do this, so I did it.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah. So that's my Grateful Dead story. They're one of the quite possibly the most important American bands to have ever existed. Culturally,
there's strong arguments to be made for that, for sure.
Culturally, musically, the business side of it. I mean, they were pioneers in stage production, in audio, in how tours could operate. I mean, there's so many things that those guys did to kind of, pave the way for the rest of us. Their influence and their their impact will be felt for as long as, as anything else possibly could in this sort of modern age of entertainment. When you think about we'll call it the recorded age. I guess that's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
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 So,
yeah, that's awesome. That's a really cool story. I that was my first time hearing any of that. So really, really interesting.
And I'll tell you what, just one last thing. So I got a text pretty quickly after the announcement was made that he had passed away. And Hudson, it was like around dinner time, and we have this there's like this structure that kind of like separates. It's like open, but there's a structure that separates my living room, our little like dining area, and our kitchen. And it basically makes like a big. Hudson treats it like a racetrack. He just like does laps, and he says, "I'm Lightning McQueen. I go fast," and he just runs in circles for forever. And so I was like, "Hey, Lightning, you want to come listen to a song with me?" Because I got the text that said, Bobby had passed away. And he's like, "What song are we going to listen to?" I was like, "Well, we're going to listen to your song." He's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, I named you after this song, Hudson Cassidy Ellis." He's like, "We don't use his middle. We're not the type of parents that are like, Hudson Cassidy, get your ass over here." Like, we don't do that shit. So he doesn't hear that name very often. He knows that's his middle name, but it doesn't register as much as maybe it used to for a lot of us. Like when I hear the name Michael, I kind of cringe a little bit because I got the Gregory Michael a lot when I was a kid. And so I was like, "Come listen to this song with me." Like the song's called Cassidy, and it's a really special song. I didn't tell him that the guy who wrote it just died, but he was like, "Okay." And then within like 30 seconds, he was back to just running loops around the house. And so I'm sitting here listening to this fucking song and just watching my kid just be an insane person. And I'm like crying my eyes out. And I was just like, what is going on right now? It was like this really just like very surreal experience of like youthful chaos and death and remembrance and such.
Again, like your whole life experience up to that point compresses into one moment.
Yeah. It was kind of wild. Rest in peace, Bobby. Thank you so much for everything you've done.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Bob. My Grateful Dead story is less interesting and not nearly as long. So, and also interesting too to hear, because like a lot of the stuff that you were talking about early in your life is like very much. I was like just sitting there going, "Yep, I went through the same thing." It was like, especially getting into Fish and Frank Zappa in high school, and just sort of like, no, like the only music is crazy music. You guys are listening. You guys are sheep, fucking idiots. You can't handle a few notes. Come talk to me when there's an arpeggio and something you're listening to, or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, early on in life, I honestly, I remember my dad also, as I mentioned earlier, my dad, I kind of just everything he had opinions about. I was like, okay, he's right, Yeah. Because he was also most of the time very, very intelligent guy and like all this type of stuff. So he really did know a lot, and it was very easy to trust him in my childhood. So when it, that naturally gravitated into opinions as well. And, he's the one who got me into a lot of music and a lot of movies and things like that are still like very formative core memories for me, and things that have easily influenced me for the rest of my life. And I can trace those with like a very clear line. But anyway, so yeah, he also was very into Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and stuff like that. So I got all that stuff, fed to me at a young age. And, I don't remember him having he wasn't a Grateful Dead fan, but I don't remember him being like very anti Grateful Dead either. He was just kind of like, it's not my thing. Yeah. So my general impression of them was just kind of, I think what everyone's was that it was like, I don't know, just like icky dudes and like hippie girls with dirty feet, listen to this music.
That's one thing I want to just say real quick, because this was had a big influence on me also when I was especially when I was a teenager and I was like starting to go to like record stores and stuff, and like when I first started really kind of digging music and shit. When you go to like head shops, especially up here in the Northeast, it's a huge thing up here in the Northeast. The sort of like cliche hippie culture. And like the tie-dye, you know, like the liquid blue tie-dye Grateful Dead shirts. Like, so I actually put I got these artist models of the Grateful Dead bears. When I was a kid, I hated all of that stuff. That was a big turnoff for me.
Yeah.
Because like, it seemed so cartoonish. And like, when you think of like the cliche sort of flower power, you know, thing that surrounds the hippie movement, it's oddly in juxtaposition to what was actually going on, right? Like the Grateful Dead wasn't a happy band per se. They had happy songs, but there was a darkness to the Dead, and there was like a real like honesty to the Dead of the shit that was going on during their time. And same too with like the hippie movement. Like the hippie movement was a protest and anger and all of these feelings disguised behind this veil of bright colors and bullshit, you know? And so that was one of the things that like I had to kind of learn over time. And as I'm sure you were starting to allude to, though, that like the perception of things can be so counterproductive to what is really going on.
Yeah.
Right. And the Grateful Dead suffered from that immensely. And Fish does too, you know, not so much now, but like they did for a long time too. And so, yeah, go on. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. No, all good. No, I mean, it's a really good point. Cause like, yeah, I mean, especially at that time, it was like, there were so many fewer means by which to like actively control the narrative as it was unfolding, you know, as there are now. Obviously it's like everybody's connected to everything all the time, but like back then it was like, you know, you'd be off tour for a while and you were just like disconnected from your fans for those months, and whatever kind of like culture brewed and developed among them in that time just all of a sudden showed up when you went back on tour, you know, and you were like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Like,
what is going on here?
You know? Yeah. So yes, no, they suffered from that a lot. And I definitely, you know, had a similar experience with coming to understand like how all that cultural iconography and those artifacts actually came to be entangled with them, you know, and even with the hippie movement, as you pointed out as well, that like actually that, you know, that started as like a very serious protest type of thing. It just became like a way for a bunch of slackers to be like, hey, wait a second, this makes it okay for me to be this way, you know, or whatever. And that's not obviously what it was intended to be, but anyway, my like earliest memory of like any contact with the actual substance of the Grateful Dead was on MTV. It was the music video for Touch of Grey.
Yeah, with the skeletons.
Yeah, and
so goofy.
I fucking hate that song. I fucking hate that video so much. It was because again, this was like,
fun fact, that's actually the last song that Bob Weir performed.
Oh no shit.
Yep. There was a thing I read. So Bobby's last song was a Jerry song. Jerry's last song was a Phil song, and Phil's last song was a Bobby song.
Wow.
How crazy is that?
That's wild.
Yeah.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, so A Touch of Grey was one of those, like, anytime this music video came on, it was like, I don't know, it was like when MASH would come on at 2 a.m. and you'd hear that fucking flute music, and you're like, oh god, like, where's the fucking remote? Like, I have to turn this off now. Because, you know, again, like, at that time I was into, I don't know, I was listening to like fucking Cannibal Corpse and like,
and
you know,
also,
shit like that.
But also, like, in the context of the times, like, that music video was so fucking hokey, and the song was so fucking hokey. And when you put it up to everything else that was going on MTV, they did themselves, even though it actually became a huge hit.
Right.
But to like the people I don't want to say the people actively trying to be cool, but like the people that were like people like us who are like getting into like the raw shit, like it didn't do them any favors.
No, it immediately confirmed all of the worst assumptions I had made about them,
Yeah.
So it was like so easy to write them off just based on that song and that video. It was like, cool, I don't like the Dead. Fast forward, of course, got into Fish, and then into, other jam bands and stuff like that as well. Nobody really had, what Fish has.
Yeah.
So it was always kind of like, I'd get into another band and like spend a few weeks like convincing myself that I liked them, and then I'd listen to Fish again and be like, what the fuck? Like, this is so much better.
Yeah. I suffer from that immensely to this day.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, that's why I don't consider myself a jam band fan, because I there are a number of jam bands that don't understand what actually makes the pretext or the pretense or whatever of what made the Dead and Fish special. It's not just that they could improvise. It was like the purpose behind the improvisation, and also the techniques of which they utilized. It's not just a 12-minute guitar solo. There's a lot more going on under the hood.
Yep.
And, so when I see a lot of the young jam bands, I'm just like, guys, what are you fucking doing? Like, what's going on up there?
We're just trading solos for 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, and it was, so, getting into them, and then it, of course, friends of mine that were also into those scenes, a bunch of them were into the Dead, and they keep trying to get me into it and stuff. And it was one of those, I was like, okay with it. I was like, it's fine.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was really because kind of exactly what you pointed out, which is like, I was listening to them as a jam band. I wasn't like, let me listen to their musical compositions, as like songwriters.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, oh, what are they going to do? Like, during this 20-minute Fire on the Mountain or whatever. And then you'd like listen to it and it was like, oh, it's okay. There's like some parts I liked and whatever, but that, we've kind of hashed all that out anyway. But yeah, it was a good friend of mine at the time, Dan Maracas, who was a guitar player. He's also had the distinction of being the guy who, like, at 15 could walk into a liquor store and not get carded. Because he had, like, I mean, he looked like he had a divorce under his belt at 15. Like, just this massive beard.
Oh, wow.
He's this huge dude. He's Greek, so he's just, like, hairy as fuck. And, like, he looked really tall and everything, too. Just looked like a full adult. But yeah, he was a really, really interesting guy. Lost touch with him over the years, which is unfortunate because I always like loved this dude. But anyway, he played guitar and he had much more. He was like my friend in the group that was more of like the singer songwriter kind of dude. He was very into like poetry, and he introduced me to a lot of like writing and books and things like that I had never been exposed to, and that were really influential on me as well. And he was the one who encouraged me to listen to exactly what you were talking about, Jerry's stuff.
Yeah.
And pointed out to me, he's like, listen to his voice. Like, his voice is incredible.
Yeah.
Listen to his lyrics. Like, his writing is amazing. He's not just a dude. Like, he's not Trey. You're listening to the Grateful Dead as like the first Fish.
Yeah.
But they're not, they're like, they're this completely different entity.
Yeah.
And that was the major disconnect that I had, when I was trying to get into them. And and so he was really the one who kind of like pushed me to change my perception of them and to listen to them more from like a singer songwriter standpoint. He's like, don't be fooled by the fact that there's like 19 people on stage.
They're the way that I think about them is they're the first indie rock band. Because like when you think about it, right? When you think about all the bands from like the mid 90s through like the early 2010s, all those bands that came out, like the Wilcos and I'm trying to think of this other band that's been very vocal about their love of the Grateful Dead. But a lot of the indie rock acts are the ones that have been very vocal about their love of the Grateful Dead in the last 10 or 15 years. And a lot of them took that Americana sound of like the Working Man's Dead era and like the more like stripped down Grateful Dead stuff. And so what it sounds like to, what you're saying and how it's been for me is like, they're the first indie rock band. They were a jam band. But there were other jam bands during that time also, but they're the first indie rock band, and that's how I appreciate them in that context.
Yeah, and so same, and it became the same thing where like I wasn't really looking for those like big juicy like down the rabbit hole kind of like jams like I would with Fish, where it's like, oh shit, they only played 4 songs this set, let's check that out. It was like with the Dead, I wanted to hear a set with like 15 songs, so I was like, no, I want to hear even whatever Wharf Rats or like whatever, there's like songs that I want to hear live and hear that emotion in his voice when he sings it, because it's like you can tell he's like re-experiencing these emotions every time he plays this piece.
It's insane what Jerry was able to do. Like it's the one great like sadness, and not the one great, but it's one of the great sadnesses in my life that I never got to experience him live, because the way that his voice carries on a recording, the amount of power behind his performances that you can listen to on an old shitty recording and still feel it. I cannot even imagine what that must feel like live.
Yeah.
Because like, I'll tell you right now, I had this moment in the gym the other day. I was going back and I was listening to the Fish New Year's run. And this past Fish New Year's run was legendary from like an actual performance standpoint. Like they played so incredibly well. And
what I've listened to has been remarkable. Yeah.
Right? But when I go back and I listen to it, I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, this recording is not translating how unfucking believable that weekend was. And so
I could never listen to the recordings of any show I had been to. It's every time I did, I was like, it's just not the same.
But there are times when it does happen, and then there are times when it doesn't. But there's like this intangible sort of thing that happens sometimes where the energy is just so palpable that it can't be reproduced, right? And that's what makes a special show special, right? But there are plenty of recordings that I listen to of shows that I've been to where I'm like, yeah, that's the show I was at. That's amazing, right? But like this New Year's run, for whatever reason, is one of those times where I was like, it's not measuring up to what I really experienced.
Yeah.
But with the Jerry stuff, I'm like, almost consistently, I can feel it. Right? Obviously, he has his bad nights. He had plenty of them. But even his bad nights sometimes were good.
Right.
In a very weird way.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, if I could just stand in front of that stage one time and just really feel that power that he had, it would be the greatest thing ever. So...
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so that really got me into the Dead, and I had a similar experience with like Dark Star Orchestra and some of those types of acts too, where it's like I'd go and see them, and you're just like, it reminded me of that the remake that Gus Van Sant did of Psycho, where he reshot all of Psycho shot for shot, and guess what? It sucks. Like, there's something else to it than just reproducing the technical elements. And like, sure, super impressive that they can like memorize and perform like an entire specific show, night after night. Like, cool. But yeah, for me, it was the same thing where you're just like, it's just like the like everything's here except the life, that's like the one thing that's missing, and it might be the most important. But anyway, to bring it back to Bob, 2 things I'll mention. One was, again, my friend Dan Maracus, who convinced me to listen to the Grateful Dead as a band and not as a jam band. He also was the one who pointed out to me how incredible Bob Weir was. Because I had a similar perception. I was kind of like, I'm here for Jerry. Like, who's this guy? Yeah. I was already kind of like, why do you have 2 drummers? Why do you have 2 guitar players? There's like 2 of everything here. Maybe you don't need it. But Bob, like, what he pointed out to me was the way that Bob would influence what Jerry was doing. Yeah. And that he, as a rhythm guitar player, could actually start to push things in a direction, and then Jerry would follow him.
Yeah.
And it was like this really subtle piece of kind of communication that was happening that everybody thought, Jerry was just driving everything. And sure, oftentimes he was, but there was a lot of stuff where Bob was actually a hugely influential force in the musical direction of like where they were going improvisationally, but just like in a back seat. And that was his fucking superpower. He was like the greatest number two, you could ever ask for.
It's kind of like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And
would MJ have won 6 championships without Scottie Pippen?
Mm.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. Actually, random aside here, my for New Year's we went bowling, and it was really fun. I suck at bowling, and before we went, we had sushi for dinner, and I kind of got sick, but like not sick enough to stay home, but sick enough that I was like a total stick in the mud while we were out bowling. But then I rolled the best game of my fucking life.
You had your flu game.
I had that's what actually Barina was out with us, and he said the same thing to me as soon as I turned around. He's like, dude, this is your flu game.
There you go.
But that's one thing that always really impressed me about Bob Weir, because it was like he didn't want to be Jerry,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, for me looking in from the outside, I just saw it more so like, that's naturally what you would want to do. You'd want to be that guy,
Yeah.
But no, he loved the position he was in, and like he respected, admired, and adored Jerry's unique talents. And I think he was so genuinely pleased and like honored to be a part of like bringing, getting the best out of him.
Yeah.
And
those guys,
and out of the band and everything. I mean, it wasn't
all
just,
of the beautiful thing about the Grateful Dead and what you're alluding to is like those guys understood the power of the unit better than anybody, right?
Yeah, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. And so, one thing, I wish I could speak more to this. I've heard this said by a million people whose opinion I respect, but Bob Weir's guitar playing was so unique, but so under the radar. In the way that his like chord formations, and he had these really insanely long fingers, so he was able to, do things that physically other guitar players couldn't do, which opened up possibilities for him musically, and he created this really incredibly unique style of rhythm guitar that just doesn't get talked about enough. And I think that's a big part of, I've started to like kind of look for it more when I listen, since I've heard this more and more over the years. And as my ears have matured, and as I've, gone deeper down the rabbit hole, I've begun to find these moments where I was like, holy shit, like that's it. It's so out of the box the way that he played, but it sounds so natural in the context of everything else that's going on. But it all falls apart if he's not doing what he's doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've heard similar stuff now that you're mentioning it. I can't remember where, but I've heard people talking about his playing. They're like, no, like even just the way he plays like a chord is like it's different.
Yeah.
It's not the same as like any other guitar player is going to play that chord,
Yeah.
And that is a big part of what made the Dead. That exactly like you said, nobody talks about. The other thing I just wanted to mention real quick too about personal relationship, not actually personal relationship with Bob Weir. I never met him or had any interaction with him whatsoever, but I did work for a talent agency, music talent agency several years ago. I was cutting videos together for a lot of their the artists they had on their roster that were basically a way to sell them to like private events. So like, say like Steve Wynn or whatever is having a fucking birthday party, and he doesn't know shit about who's popular. So it's like he needs to see these like minute long sizzle videos of like, look how much money this person made, like who's gonna impress your friends to have playing at your birthday party or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was like sizzle videos of these artists for like this type of stuff. And Bob Weir was one of the people that I got handed as like, you've got to do the Bob Weir video. And it was hands down my favorite one of those videos that I worked on at like period, because so many of the other ones were just like pop, music type of stuff, just real flashy music videos, and like, you know, this many like awards and like ticket sales and blah blah blah, like flashing all this stuff. And like the Bob Weir one was kind of just like, we had this great interview footage with him to work with. I ripped that documentary off of Netflix and stole some shit from there.
Oh, the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But hearing it, like really digging in on like the kind of Bob Weir side of things, and especially his like post Jerry Garcia journey with the music and with the Dead and all that type of stuff, was definitely the most like enlightening, like inspirational journey I had doing any of those videos, which were for the most part just like a job.
Sure.
You know, but this one was like really meaningful, and it actually, for like a year after that, both my wife and I got like back into the Dead like really heavily for a while, just from doing that. And like even more so, like, yes, the music for sure, but even just hearing him talk, you know, and just hearing him,
he has a very interesting way of saying things.
Yes, he does.
There's no other way to put it.
Yep. Yeah, but it's just unique, but it's so genuine, you know, at the same time. It's like nobody would think to say this way unless they really meant it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So and he also just gave zero fucks.
Yeah,
zero fucks.
But I loved putting that together, and I felt it was one of those. I was like, okay, I hope Bob Weir gets a gig, you know, an extra like, here's $100,000 to play like one night for an hour at my birthday party type of job. I was like, I hope this happens for Bobby.
Did you ever get like, oh, this video worked, this person hired them to do that?
No,
did you ever get that feedback?
Sadly, no, they didn't give a fuck, but they kept hiring me. Like,
so you must have been doing a good job then.
Yeah, no, they were happy. Well, I remember the first video I turned into them, I was like blown away. I was so surprised by their reaction, because they were like, this is amazing. I'm like, I just fucking ripped some videos from YouTube and like edited them together, and they were like, oh man, like the other ones we've seen though, like we had one of the other editors, it was like all cell phone footage and stuff like that, and just didn't look like professional and polished and stuff. I'm like, okay, I mean, if you're gonna hire an editor that's gonna rip like iPhone videos off of YouTube for you, then, you know, shame on you, I guess. But yeah, no, they were like blown away that I used the professionally shot footage of these major artists. I'm like, there's a lot to choose from, guys.
Yeah, of course. How long ago was this?
This was, I want to say like 2018 or something like that.
Yeah, so YouTube was well established and all that kind of, yeah. Okay.
Which was also funny because this was a major agency, like really, really big name.
Yeah.
And they had zero assets to give me. I was like, these are your artists. Like, you guys don't have any like video content to give me for this? They're like, no, you can just like go on YouTube and find some stuff. I'm like, okay, I guess.
That's hilarious.
It was a bizarre gig, but it was extraordinarily lucrative. And
that's the beauty of because they're not selling the video. They're just using it as an asset. So it's like, there's no, you have to worry about copyright infringement or any of that bullshit.
Exactly.
Take whatever you need. Yeah.
Purely
it's actually
internal.
kind of amazing.
Yeah. Like 15 people are ever going to see this thing, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of cool to be in that like weird, tiny, like niche area of the market.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, that's the end of my Bob Weir story.
There we have it then.
But yeah, incredible guy. Does not, I feel, even for how celebrated he's become, you know, with the success of everything post Jerry and how he's handled it, I feel like he's still not talked about enough.
Well, you know, I think about this a lot, right? Because we suffer from a similar sort of existence of not doing a good job of putting ourselves out there all the time. And when I say we, I mean sort of the Pretty Lights Project.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when your intentions are not, when your greatest intentions aren't to become famous or to be the award-winning this or that, or when your intentions are the art and the health of the project, you sacrifice a certain level of notoriety. It's just it's a necessary evil, so to speak, right? Because the second that people start talking about you is the moment that people want to become more involved with you. and the moment they want to manipulate how you do things. And so, you have to sacrifice a certain level of fame or a certain level of public consciousness or notoriety or whatever to maintain that purity, so to speak. And so, and that's, kind of bookending how we started this episode, where like, it wasn't Bob Weir that monetized the dead at the end. It was John Mayer who monetized the dead at the end.
Credit where credit is due and blame where blame is due. Yeah.
And I'm sure Bob benefited from it.
Sure.
But by no means was he the captain of that ship. And I think that's just, that's the nature of how the world operates.
Yeah.
If you choose your art first, you're going to lose a certain level of cachet within the scope of the how the world values you, in a sense, which is a terrible thing to say, but it's the truth.
Yeah, it's our truth. Yeah.
So there's I wish I could. What's the name of that song? There's a Wilco song that like sums that whole concept up perfectly. But it was like, this guy has a voice of gold, but no one's ever heard him before because he's an artist. He's not a star or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just it. Bob Weir was the ultimate artist. For his path, and the business could come or go as it pleased. He didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
He was all I saw that dude
pushing the music forward.
I saw that dude play in front of 2,500 people in a shitty backwoods, mountain festival, and he played just like he would have played in front of 90,000 people. And that's awesome. The music
says
always
about type of dude he was. Yeah.
Yeah, the music always came first. And so I think, this is a beautiful way to wrap this episode up. I once again just thank you, Bobby, for everything. Cha, because man, that was. I'll end with this. So when I first started getting into the Grateful Dead, this is a funny. We can end this on a funny sort of thing.
Perfect.
And you watch some of those. There's like oh gosh, what were those videos called? I've got them here somewhere, but there was like Down from the Mountain or something like that. It was Alpine. Yeah. It was Alpine Valley, I believe, maybe 89 or something like that.
Winter Wonderland or something.
Well, that was the 70s.
Oh,
but there's a video from the late 80s, and there's an estimated profit, and it's a Bob Weir song, and he's wearing the short shorts.
Yeah,
right. He's got the short shorts on, and he's doing estimated profit. He's doing estimated profit, and he does this sort of like vocal scat sort of thing on the end of the second verse or whatever, and it's like na 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 cha, right? And he starts throwing these kicks out in the short shorts, and this probably fed into my like not taking him seriously phase, but for the life of me, I could not take him seriously, because I'm just like, these guys are up here doing this insane shit. This motherfucker's playing in front of 30,000 people. He's got pink short shorts on. He's throwing out kicks, and he's just going cha. And like, we used to watch this like late nights, and I would just laugh my ass off. And I was like, this is not the intended purpose of what's going on right now. I should not be laughing, but I cannot help myself. So, cha. Thanks, Bobby. Rest in peace, brother.
Yeah. Thanks for the chas.